And welcome back to GBS Morning Extra. If you are just joining us, our hashtag is GBS Morning Extra. Our Twitter handle is @GBS Kenya. Now, as I promised earlier, with me joined in studio today is Rokin Okoth, of course, political analyst. We've been with him here before, you know him. And we are also honored to be joined by Victor Marende, who is also a political analyst. Gentlemen, karibuni sana kwa studio. Let's start with Victor. Yeye ndio mgeni leo tunamkaribisha hapa. Victor, how have you been?
I'm fine.
The weekend was great.
The weekend was great. A lot of rest, wonderful times, and at least we didn't experience the fight of our politicians.
Of our politicians. Churches. Actually, we saw a lot of apologies going around. And maybe just to comment on the state of this kind of politics that we've always had, where always during the weekends we have politicians in church, and it doesn't seem to stop. Politics and church in pulpits.
You know, one funny thing about Kenyans, and I also see it in our trained professionals, is that they want to alienate the church from the state. Now, a state without a church is not a state. But then in the Kenyan constitution, we are very clear in the preamble that there would not be a state religion. But then the constitution recognizes that there would be religions. And in religions, there are churches. And when you read the history of the church, and when you read the Bible keenly, you'd be able to realize that there was politics in the Bible. And there were authorities who were in political offices in the Bible. Running right from the Old Testament, where we had Joseph holding a political office in the name of a governor. Then going through the Bible. In fact, even when one of the disciples of Jesus committed suicide, that was Judas. In the replacement of Judas, there was an election in the book of Acts. And even the deeds that Jesus did, he had instant solutions akin to what our politicians do today. And the Bible also talks about leadership coming from God. So then it means that early in the Bible and early in the days that religion was set up, you realize that politics played a major role. But then the worry that we need to have as Kenyans is not why the church talks about politics, because if in any case, then they also have a corporate social responsibility. They need to do all this, and that's why the Catholic Church, which I'm a member of, has schools. We have hospitals. Those are corporate social responsibilities that, as a church, you need to set out to do. And you realize that that is part of what politics is, because when you define politics in its basic nature, it is basically allocation of resources and who does that allocation at that particular time.
But then looking at the kind of politics that is being played in our pulpits, Rokin, one would not totally agree. I mean, the definition is very clear, Marende. But the kind of politics that we are seeing in our churches, where leaders are exchanging blows and fighting over microphones in church, is that the kind of politics that we really want to go? I mean, to involve the church in?
Actually, you can't take politics to the altar. The altar must be sanctified, and if the church is on the forefront to allow politicians to play their game, their dirty game, and wash their dirty linen on the altar, then that is very bad. He has rightfully said that in our constitution, the constitution states that there will be no state religion. And therefore, if politicians want to use the altar and to politic for the purposes of their own personal interests, or for the purposes of supporting their other political leaders, then it is very wrong. Because you cannot use the altar where people feel like is the last resort to go and ask God for their own forgiveness, to go and pray, to go and maybe reflect on their daily activities, and want to take politics to the altar, then that one is very wrong, and it should be condemned to to the latter by anybody who cares to understand that article that talks about there shall be no state religion, and anybody who understands that the church is a place to seek solace and a place to pray other than politicking. Because we have so many platforms in the country where people can go politic or outside the church. But if we have some religious leaders who want to use politicians for financial support, then they can do so outside the altar. You cannot go to the altar and fight, for example, in the name of protecting the community interests or the interests of a certain...
Like what we saw in Dindi
Yes.
Let me just say something
Yes.
about this thing. Now, it is what our politicians do in these pulpits that is bad at times. But then, when the church has always been involved in the politics of the nation,
Yes.
and just an example of Kenya, we've succeeded. Look at the multi-party politics in the country.
Sure.
We had religious leaders, the likes of the late Bishop Muge was assassinated. We had Timothy Njoya, we had Bishop Okula of the Maseno Diocese. And they did a lot.
They played
as
a
church.
vital role even in the formation of the new
Exactly.
constitution.
So we must not say that the church cannot be involved. What we need to know is that there are guidelines to what happens in church. What the Honorable Ndindi Nyoro did was not honorable at all. And I'm now glad that he apologized. But then he needs to know that there is a limit to which you can go in church. But then to say entirely that we do not need politicians in church is a wrong footing. But then we need to define what these politicians do in church, because politicians are all human. It is human beings who need to go to church.
Need to go to churches.
So we can't say entirely that we don't need politicians in church. What if I want to go to church to just pray? And if in any case there is the G's and liking of our leaders in the country. So whenever you appear in public, which I believe church is a public place. So then when you appear in public, the public would want to hear from you. So there is that excitement about our leaders. But then we need to maintain the sanctity of the church even as we do all this. The only issue that must be addressed apart from the fighting that has been experienced in church is the kind of donations that we also see in our churches.
Which I actually wanted to bring up, because right now we have the Honorable Mbadi, who is pushing a bill through and wants to cap the amount of contribution that can actually be given to churches, because we've also seen some state officials and even elected officials who have been implicated in corruption issues, huge corruption scandals, including involving billions of money, always frequenting the churches and giving their donations in church. And someone is asking themselves, this guy is actually being investigated for embezzling public funds, and here he is every Sunday, like your party leader said the other time, wanakuja na magunia kwa kanisa, tuulize hizi magunia zimetoka wapi? The church is not questioning that.
The church would not necessarily question
but
that.
Should they?
In entirety.
Should they?
I would answer you in a Bible verse. But then I would want to say that I'm a member of the ODM party. Yes. I support the party. But on the issue of the party chairman saying that he wants to cap what we give in church and give a limit to which you can give in church, I think he's misguided on that. And for particular reasons. Number one, you give from your heart. Yes. You can't tell me that the only limit I can give to is 100,000. I might want to give to the church in kind, for example. I go to a church, I realize that the floor is not in good condition, yes. And out of a good heart, I say that I want to build the house of God. You won't limit it to 100,000.
But I think what Mbadi is trying to do is not really capping and saying you cannot give more than 100 Gs.
He has a figure to it.
But what he's saying, he has 100 Gs as a figure, but what he's saying is anything beyond 100 Gs, let's first investigate that money and know the actual source, and then this will proceed. It
is a blind proposal. When you read through it, he is not proposing how you want. He wants to do it. I think we cannot make laws for individuals. As a lawmaker, he must realize that the constitution must always be progressive, and when we have acts of parliament and bills in parliament, they need to be progressive in nature. You can't just say because Ruto gave 100,000 in church, now you want to limit him so that he must only give 10 shillings.
I see Rokin shaking his head and is really burning to answer this.
You know,
Your take on that,
you know,
Rokin?
first of all, I start from the point he said that politicians are not are allowed to go to church. If they must go to church, then they should not go as politicians. Let them go as part of the congregation. And if anything, then why would they saunter to the front benches in the church? Why can they be humble and even go sit behind, and after their masses, they can go home or even address people outside the church? Why go and politic in church? That's why I agree with what he's saying, they are trying to politicize the issue of going to church. But on the issue of Mbadi coming up with a law to curb the amount people are supposed to pay in church, to some extent is right, because even the Bible talks about 10% of your revenue. But now if somebody gives more than even 100% of his salary, you know, somebody has gone to more than 4 churches, and in every church is living over 2 million. Where is he getting this money? That's the question. The church and the pulpit should not be used as a means of sanctifying money that has been found in means that maybe are illegal. What Mbadi is just trying to do is to come up with a law that will actually address this issue in a manner that will actually help the country and protect the country and the public resources of the nation. On the question of church being political in nature, and in the Bible, quoting the Bible, you know, even the disciples, you said, when Judas Iscariot died and the process of getting other people, Jesus appointed his disciples in the first place. Yes, I understand. I don't know whether that one was political, but
that was direct nomination.
But that is akin to the executive of the president, where he appoints ministers.
The leadership at that time, which was political in nature, we see how it tried to fight even Jesus Christ himself at that time. So if he was really political, then I don't know the kind of politics he was playing, because he did not answer the leadership, and then using the political card. Of course, he was using parables and things that are related to God to answer. Yeah, he used parables.
I didn't say that Jesus was a politician, and you need to understand one thing, that Jesus came as a guider. And he wanted to give solutions to each and every aspect of life, including politics. Remember a time in the Bible when a very rich man went to Jesus, and it is documented that because of the position he held in society, he went at night and in secret.
That's Nicodemus.
Yes. And asked God that if I want to be born again, then what can I do? So he had a solution even for the politicians. That doesn't mean he was a politician. Now, when Jesus wanted the world to know that democracy also existed, and that is when they took a vote. You get the point? So if we have to give solutions, then from the Bible, I think the Bible gives solution to all aspects of life, including that politics that we do. So he had solutions for this.
Okay.
Well, let me try and move this conversation a bit forward. Recently, as we say this, now the issue of donations or the offerings that are being given to church, it's still an issue that is being discussed. Of course, the bill is still in Parliament. It hasn't been passed, but still being pushed. We don't know how far it will go. But what I also would like to shift our focus right now to, still on the same, is about earlier this month, like earlier this year, around the month of May or April there, the Catholic Church banned, politics on their pulpits. I think it was somewhere in Nakuru, if I'm not wrong, a diocese in Nakuru. But then some few months later, we find a politician again standing on a Catholic platform or pulpit and again almost the same issue happening again. What happened? I mean, is the church so lenient to these politicians that it's allowing these things to go over and over again? Because even after the Ndindi Nyoro and Commander confrontation, again the church came out strongly and again banned politics on their pulpit. How many times do we do this? What is really wrong, Rokin? I see you smiling.
You know, it is a matter of our attitude as a society and a nation, because if we make decisions today and tomorrow we violate the same decisions we made yesterday or today, then it means that there is something wrong with our attitude. If the leadership of the church, I'm very sure they work in collaboration, decided that there will be no politics at the pulpit, and then they violate the same decision they made several months ago, then it means that the church, or even some members of the church, because it could be maybe the leadership of the church in Kiharu is the one that invited the guests to attend, and whatever happened. But it speaks to our attitude as a society, and if people can take politics to the pulpit, and that's what I'm against. I'm not against any leader going to church. If people can take politics to the pulpit, and even to the extent of fighting, the church is not to blame fully for that, because 3/4 of the blame should go to the leadership, to the leaders that went to the church and fought. Because if they could not have fought in the church, then the issue would not have come out the way it came out. It would not have portrayed the leadership or the leaders that were in charge in that manner. So it is not something that we can reduce the blame to the church alone. The blame, a fair share of the blame can also go to.
So they share,
leaders.
according to you, they should share the blame.
And if the DCI, the office of the DCI, or even the police, was to intervene, then it should not have taken a Kiharu member of parliament alone for questioning. All the parties involved should have been taken into consideration and questioned.
Should the church equally also have been questioned on the same, because of the issue happened in the premise?
No, the state is not in any way supposed to actually be involved in religious activities. The state cannot go and tell the church how to conduct its business. So I'm sure the only person...
Are you sure?
The state...
But we saw the other time where
everybody is free to worship and to do anything that he can do in church.
But we've seen in the past where the Attorney General actually seized registration of any religious organization.
That is why I've asked him. Is he sure?
What I'm saying is this. The state cannot come in and control religious activities in a manner that everybody has the freedom to worship. And that it is enshrined in the Constitution. If there is no state religion, then I can wake up today and decide that this is my religion, and I support it.
Victor, in this case, what I'm trying to find here is, if, like Rokin is saying, true, they should not just go after Ndindi Nyoro, they should have gone also after Commander, who was also involved in the broil. But also, there was the priest who was presiding over the meeting, who was present at, when this was happening. Shouldn't he also be questioned if they were if the police were really to investigate the matter?
The file has not yet been thrown out, because I understand the file is with the DPP. And Nurdin is known to be a thorough man.
Yes.
So I believe in the fullness of time,
he'll revisit.
He will revisit this case. That one I'm sure. But then, on whether the DCI and his police should have gone for the priests and the minor commander and the few members of parliament who were present. I think they should have done that as part of their investigations, because then the priest was there in person. He saw everything that happened. In fact, if Ndindi Nyoro claimed that he was invited, then the priest can confirm or not. And if there was any protocol that was to be observed, because there is no law that says that if I'm an MP for Arieda, for example, and that a guest is invited from Kakamega, and that guest must only be invited by me. No law states that. So there was no point that Maina Commander was out of order, so that Ndindi Nyoro, as the Kiaru member of parliament, was to intervene, so that he was the boss. There is no law as such. It is only out of courtesy that it is done. But then, on whether our politicians are right or not, I think we need to talk about the hygiene in politics in this country. If a politician goes to church and talks issues in church, I'm invited to speak. And I talk about how we intend to clean our healthcare in this nation.
All right.
How we intend to build on our infrastructure. How we intend to ensure that we have more cancer centers, for example. I think that is very much welcome in church.
Sure. That's sober discussion.
Yeah, so I think it also boils down to what we speak in church. And when you see the campaigns in the US, for example, at the moment, and we're having the Democratic candidates going across the nation. I saw Elizabeth Warren in church on Sunday, and she was allowed to speak. And Elizabeth Warren was talking about the public debt, student loans. She's talking about healthcare. And there was a way in which she was able to connect with the congregants.
Yes.
She was able to talk to their hearts. And even at some point, there was a question from the congregation to her. And that is much welcome. So we cannot exclusively say that politicians must be congregants, and they are even they can sit at the back seat. It is out of choice.
Yes.
Some come, sit
They just
there.
sit.
But if you're invited for an event,
All right.
you didn't, because I might be Catholic, for example, and I'm invited to an ACK congregation.
You will.
I will go. And they didn't invite me as a congregant.
Yes.
They invited me because I'm a leader. So they would expect to hear from me. It is my objectivity that will ensure that the congregation is not in chaos. Like what I saw, a congregation carrying placards yesterday.
Even yesterday, they tried to disrupt when Maina Commander was in Laikipia.
And this trend is growing, and you must realize that it is only growing in one political divide.
Which actually is brings me to this question. As you answer this, maybe you'll also join with this. There's something that is happening right now, that the Jubilee Party, in its divided factions, is now actually turning to be more violent. And I would say the victim is the church, because mostly they meet in churches where they hold harambes and stuff, where we have the Kieleweke group and the Tanga Tanga group going at loggerheads. And we've seen even the Kieleweke group also in some instances interrupt or come and interject in functions that are being held by the opposing factions. What do you make of this, continued, what can I call it, violent approach to politics in Kenya?
First of all, let me talk about what he said about the US. The US is at another level or stage of democracy. We cannot compare ourselves to the US democratically.
But not that,
in Kenya,
but not that the US democracy is the standard democracy.
Yeah, like in Kenya, the US has no state religion. And Kenya, we are still in sectarian politics. We are still playing tribal politics. So that when you see Kiharu, member of parliament, standing on anywhere to talk, then he's representing somebody, and he wants his backyard to follow him. When you see somebody allied to another faction called Kieleweke, then that one is the say of majority of the people who are in that faction. When you see the deputy president speaking, for example, he's not speaking on behalf. People misconstrue that to mean that maybe he's speaking on behalf of his 2022 bid and maybe his tribe and his people who are in Tanga Tanga. If you see another person, that is our style of politics. But in the US, people talk about issue-based politics. So
but
putting them as a litmus test.
Can I interject?
Yes.
Can I interject, Bonarokin?
Yes.
If we say that, it's the nature of the US population that allows them to play that kind of politics. But then if you want to scrutinize deeply, you realize that they have Hispanic votes, they have black votes, they have white votes.
He's trying to justify the mess that we are going through. Let me tell you something. look at how Trump premised his campaigns. It was white against black,
Sure.
Americans against others. You get that?
Yeah.
And he was talking about white American people against the others.
Which has been equally criticized.
And it was criticized. So when you want to say that our nature of politics allows this, then it also means that their nature of politics allowed that. What we have to agree is that there is a standard way of operation in politics. The standard of operation is that we need to talk about issues. We need to classify ourselves as a human race, as Kenyans, for example. I am Kenyan before I'm Luo. But the Kenyan scenario is that I'm Luo before I'm Kenyan.
Yeah.
You get that?
Sure.
So that is what we need to solve.
Rokin was trying to make a point. I just wanted a point of clarity on the same, because we cannot entirely want to compare the Kenyan situation,
With the
which
US.
still reflects, I mean, they have those different, I would say,
But
groupings.
they are talking issues.
They're talking issues. We also have 42 tribes, which you cannot sweep under the carpet.
But
Yes,
we have
please.
refused to talk
The
issues.
modus operandi
Uh-huh.
of politics or democracy of Kenya vis-a-vis that of the US
Yes, yeah.
is not comparable at any time of the day. It's not comparable. How old is the US democratically?
200 plus.
Surely, Kenya, we are, you know, this idea of trying to put ourselves and trying to compare ourselves to the US in anything, you know, it's very wrong. We have our own problems that reflect the environment within which we live. We have our own history as a country that we must address as a nation before we can even start comparing ourselves to the US,
Yes.
because we are incomparable. On the issue of Kieleweke and Tangatanga, how they have become very, very aggressive,
And violent in some instances. Yeah.
you know, when Baba went to extend his hand with His Excellency the President, that's when things got sour in Jubilee.
Yeah.
That's
From
when
March,
there was
yeah.
fire on the mountain. You know, like in any other family, if you are like 10 boys or 10 children in a family and your father decides to adopt another child, and it seems like he is favoring this
favoring
child
that one.
over you, you know, you might have that jostling for resources and power, and everybody wants to show that I'm the legitimate son of my father. So that's what is happening in Jubilee. The moment Baba went to shake hands with the Uhuru, that's when these people came out. That's when the two factions came out, and that's why we are seeing this jostling for power and resources and positions in Jubilee today. So long as this handshake stands, so long as the BBI, which is the child of the handshake, stands or will come out, then expect the rift in Jubilee to continue up to 2020.
So we're saying that the handshake was the beginning of the end of Jubilee as a party.
It was the beginning of the end.
All right.
Of Jubilee.
Says who?
Says who? Let's hold that thought. When we come back, I want us to start
Says
from
who?
there. I want us to start from there. Bwana Victor Marende. Well, today I'm joined in studio by Mr. Victor Marende, who is a political analyst, and of course Rokin Okoth also, who have been with us continuously. We are discussing the state of politics in the country. We've looked at several issues, the church and politics, and right now we're looking at the BBI coming in, and we say the BBI is a child of, you know, was born during the handshake, which is a fact that cannot be overlooked. We now take a short break. When we come back, I want to continue from that point. Says who? That the BBI was the end of the beginning of the end for the Jubilee Party. We take a short break. When we come back, we'll discuss more on this.